Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 174. This week we talk with Jared Kuehn about the Mile of Music project. We also cover some of the big announcements from Connect. And why is JSON parsing 10x faster than XML parsing in SQL Server?
This episode of the MS Dev Show is brought to you by Expose, the market leader of .NET and Java APIs for file business formats. Natively work with DocX, XSLX, PPT, PDF, MSG, MPP, image formats, and many more. Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. Replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files or having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications. Check it out today at raygun.com.
This week we have Jared Kuehn, a data analytics engineer for Skyline Technologies and a developer for the Mile of Music Festival. Welcome, Jared.
Welcome. Happy to be here.
Carl, what's going on?
So as normal, we want to remind people of our Slack. You can chat to us and other listeners who listen to this fabulous podcast. You can sign up at slack.msdevshow.com. And then to participate, you can go to msdevshow.slack.com. So do that.
Yeah, and you basically get like full concierge service there. Anytime you ask a question or comment, we're always engaging with everybody.
Try to be anyways. And we want to remind everybody, as we are taking away the month of November, December 1st is the end of our Raygun contest. So as a reminder, what is the biggest computer or programming fail, computer programming bug that you have seen or run against or perhaps even created yourself? Let us know. We want to hear about this. Just as a reminder, we will obfuscate the details to protect you if that's what you need. But we've got some pretty good submissions so far, and we would really like to make sure everybody has a great chance to win either the full year Raygun license or one of the 3 swag offerings that they're giving away.
And it is not valid if you just email in Carl's code.
Unless you have a copy of it and you highlight my sections.
Maybe if you're the first person, I don't know. Cool. Okay. What do we got up next here? What do we got for the comment of the week?
The comment of the week this week gets a developer small business license for Expose.total for .NET, which includes all of the Expose.NET products in one package. And this week was really hard because we had tons of comments on our website regarding the diversity topic that we talked about. I believe that was with Rachel? We've had so many people.
No, it was with Sarah. Sarah Wachter-Betcher, yeah.
So I picked one of them, and it was Brad Rembilak. And he said, our lack of diversity in our industry makes it too easy for us to fall into groupthink when designing solutions. We overrepresent what we think of as the average user, and we focus on the technology and not the true human experience.
Exactly.
There was some really good discussions. We even had some people kind of go back and forth with each other on each side of it. So I really enjoyed reading those points of view. And remember, you can comment on any episode. We have a discuss on every post. And it will get you entered in to win on the comment of the week. So if you want to get mentioned on the show like Brad, send us an email to feedback@msdevshow.com or comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Stitcher. We really like the 5-star iTunes reviews. And just as a reminder, if like Brad, you have been a winner, contact us with your email address so I can get that in.
Perfect. Okay, let's jump into the news. We got about 3 hours of news. So let's jump in and get started. So the first one here, JSON parsing 10x faster than XML parsing. And this is in SQL Server.
Yeah. So I think a lot of us think of SQL Server and we think of, hey, it's got a ton of built-in XML tools. And just recently that they've kind of like wedged some JSON support.
Wedged? I hope not.
Well, sometimes,
they've added the functionality.
Well, and that's what I'm thinking. this is the thought, that's what you think of sometimes. Like there's this very old product. They obviously wedged it, but, on the SQL Server and Tools blogs last week, they mentioned that JSON parsing is 10 times faster than doing the XML parsing. And they even give you some code and experiments to follow. And they even say that, technically the XML is bigger. So, that, does have a little bit, but it's only minorly bigger. So that's really not a factor.
Minorly bigger.
Minorly bigger. We're developers. We're not English majors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so no, that's a good point. That like you mentioned, like wedging it in. That is a good point though, because I actually think that it probably does feel like that because SQL Server is like the structured data store, and then you're storing this like blob of like unstructured stuff in there. But yeah, I was surprised too. Like it is pretty fast. I'm guessing like anything, it's one of those things though where you if you try to run a query of like the data inside of there and you do it in a poor way, like you're going to suffer through bad performance just because there's really no way to optimize that. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Perfect. Introducing Twitter premium APIs.
Yeah. So I know in the heyday of Twitter, when it first came out, there was just the ecosystem was flush with Twitter apps that everybody kind of had. And then Twitter put a big kibosh on it. They really reined things in. There's still third-party applications. In fact, I always use a third-party Twitter app.
But they've all sort of been grandfathered in, right?
Well, you've either been grandfathered in or you have token limits, which limits how big you can really get. So you can't really be, kind of take over the world. You're limited to like 100,000 users or something like that, I believe. So what Twitter has done is they've allowed what they're calling premium APIs now. So it's kind of sitting in between the standard APIs, which we've had for a while, and what they've called their enterprise APIs, which are very, very expensive ways to get access to kind of like the fire hose. And this is kind of on a realm of, or a spectrum of, there's going to start off with a free aspect, but as you start paying, and you'll start paying a little bit more quickly than with the previous API version, then you can, get to have a little bit more access than what is available in the standard tier. So if you're one of those people trying to think that you have a better way to make a Twitter client app, but you were kind of distraught on how they've kind of limited things in the past, you might want to look at these APIs and see what you can do.
Yeah, it says it's basically $2 signs instead of $3 signs for the enterprise APIs.
It's a free $2 signs.
Actually, I had to look though. So it is, if I'm reading this correctly, it's $149 a month, which is kind of interesting. But it sounds like, this is more for like not necessarily the fire hose of tweets, but to get more of a fire hose type of access. Okay, well that's cool. I love more access because I feel like that was really the strong suit of Twitter, and then they sort of went a different direction. So it's good to see more and more access there. GitHub adopts Microsoft's tool for supporting massive software projects. When I saw this, I was like, oh, this isn't anything new, because I was reading about the what do they call it? The GVFS.
Yep,
but this actually is a
virtual
big deal.
file
This
system.
This is new. So you want to talk about why it's new?
I just accidentally clicked out of it. Yeah, but
well, it's the adoption by GitHub is the new part.
Yeah. So, just as a recap, the Git virtual file system was something that Microsoft created because for Windows, and they wanted to move to Git for Windows, but, apparently it's just like terabytes and terabytes in size, just the source code. And there's really no way to really work with that locally. I mean, just to pull in, a small portion of that is still kind of tough. And what GVFS allows Microsoft to do is to really isolate and bring down just what you need for your development piece, and by I think what is it, a hardware driver, by virtualizing your hard drive and utilizing that technique behind the scenes, and you can still through your client just interact with it like it was Git. So it just pulls down what you need as you need it. So that's really cool. And Git is adopting it. Or GitHub is adopting it.
Yeah. I mean, that's significant because it's just, hey, I know Microsoft isn't necessarily a random company, but, just having a company do it doesn't mean that people have to sort of respect it or pay attention to it. But now with GitHub endorsing it, I mean, that's a massive endorsement. And now you have two big companies, one of them being, obviously the experts in Git. And so that's why I think that this is super significant.
Yes, and in addition, Atlassian has added experimental support to Bitbucket, and it's also if you have Tower, SourceTree, or Gmaster clients, they support GVFS.
Very cool. Okay, so let's get to the Microsoft Connect announcements. The first one, VS Code Live. Actually, I should say Visual Studio Live Share, which is mind blowing. You want to tell us about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was one I think that everybody got really excited once they saw the demos. So they showed, pair programming is something that's, been around for quite a few years, but really to kind of take advantage of that, you have to be in the same room as somebody else, somebody sitting next to somebody, one person driving, one person kind of just sitting there as the backseat driver, kind of just watching and being passive. What this is it's a system where you can actually have both people editing the same document at the same time. So 2 keyboards, 2 mice, 2 monitors, and working on the same code. And it can be from a distance, so you could be across the world. It's not like you have to be on the same local network or VPN together. Mm-hmm. But in addition, it's not just Visual Studio tool. It's Visual Studio and VS Code, and it doesn't matter what OS VS Code is on either. So you could be on Mac or Linux.
And you can mix and match.
And mix and match with any other combination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the demo was actually with VS Code and Visual Studio, which I thought was really cool. So, and actually the video on this, not to sort of derail this whole thing, but the video of it was very good. And it actually showed like the Docker functionality in VS Code. And it's funny because I have the Docker extension for VS Code, and I actually never really played around with it much. I didn't realize like the stuff that it does for me. I was at the command line doing all of the same stuff. But being able to just click in there and say, do this, do that, was pretty cool. So Jared, how are you going to use this Visual Studio Live Share?
Yeah, I was, as soon as you shared this with me, I was really interested in the live share. Granted, I mostly live in the database world, so it's a little bit of a different discussion for me. Mm-hmm. I'm getting more opportunities nowadays to work in database projects, which if this works with that, I think there's a lot of really good opportunities because a lot of the people I'm working with on databases nowadays were geographically dispersed, so it would be nice to be able to dig straight into the code side by side and figure some of these things out. So I'm blown away by this right now, and I really hope it's as good as it looks.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know you and I, Carl, have done this over Skype where you're like, hey, take a look at this code and help me figure out what's going on, and being able to send this link and make it so that I don't have to be like, can you hover over A? Can you hover over B? Can you flip back to this? Like I can actually kind of look around and figure out what's going on and then look at values while you're set at a breakpoint. Like that is really cool. So I think this is a pretty significant feature. Not to leave like Adam out, but Adam, the text editor, also, I believe, added similar functionality. I haven't really looked into it though, but just kind of giving people a heads up that there is a solution over there as well. Okay, Xamarin, .NET embedding. What is this about, Carl?
This was really cool. So if you have like an iOS app that it's kind of, you've already got the code, it's already Objective-C or Swift or something like that. And you want to, integrate some code that you're writing fresh, but you want to do it from C#, there wasn't a great way to do it in the past. But now using .NET embedding, what you can do is have your .NET code be consumed from other programming languages in their environment. So you can have your .NET library converted into something that Objective-C or Android can consume directly. Okay. And as part of that, it's not just like this, vague tool. It's the Embeddinator 4000.
Well, it's good because they skipped the first 3 versions.
Yes.
Maybe 3,999, depending on how you look at it.
So it's a tool that takes the .NET assembly and generates the necessary glue to surface the .NET API as a native API. And it works with going from .NET to C, Objective-C, and the various Apple variants like Swift and Java across Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So from any operating system you're on, you can go from .NET to essentially iOS and Android with minimal effort.
That's crazy. Crazy cool. Okay, very cool. And then speaking of Xamarin Forms are aligning to the XAML standard preview. Too many XAMLs and Xamarins there. Xamarin Forms are aligning to the XAML standard preview.
Yeah, at Build last year, Microsoft announced XAML standard with the promise to be the one XAML to rule them all, but without any kind of comment on how it was going to happen. It was really like, hey, we're going to create a community where we can take all of our input and make sure we're doing it right. And it looks like some of the first pieces that are being proposed are coming out. And what it's looking like is kind of the WPF/UWP style of XAML is kind of winning the day. And when you're in Xamarin Forms, you'll be able to, at least right now, this is not set in stone, include an additional package which will allow you to use that style of XAML syntax. So you'll be able to have a stack panel and list view and data template and view cell and stuff like that, like you would in the traditional Microsoft made XAML.
Yep.
You'll still be able to use your Xamarin Forms XAML there, but there's going to be the proper bindings behind the scene to map this new one to whatever the Xamarin Forms is using for now. So it sounds like we're going to get there to the kind of one XAML syntax, but underlying in Xamarin is still going to be what they've always had. So if you're using Xamarin, you can use either new or old, but if you're coming to Xamarin from Microsoft technology, this could ease your transition.
Okay, next up on the IoT or the AIoT and AI front, aischool.microsoft.com.
Yeah, there was a section during the Connect announcements where they were talking about AI, and one of the things I think that's interesting as developers is a lot of us hear that and we're like, yes, we're totally interested in it. I mean, last week we had Jennifer Marsman on to talk all about this, and some of us still are like, what do I need to do? I need to be walked through this. I need to, somebody needs to show me an example. So if you go to aischool.microsoft.com, there is a bunch of videos and modules and examples to guide you through the AI and ML kind of world, just to get you up to speed with some real hands-on kind of guided led courses.
Yeah, this is very cool. Like I clicked through and it's having me like analyze like the number of words in something, and it's very detailed. Very cool. And then they have like a GitHub repo that you end up starting with. Very cool. Let's see. IoT Edge. What do we get? There's like a whole bunch of stuff on IoT Edge. There's a tutorial. How do you want to tackle this? You just want to talk about Edge all up?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Edge all up, and we'll just kind of go right through this. But if you go to the show notes, we'll have a bunch of links on IoT Edge. And part of the reason why I have all these links on IoT Edge is because I've been kind of looking at this really deeply, being kind of an IoT person myself. But what was announced at Connect was a new way to run code on your IoT devices or on the edge. So what this edge is, it's a runtime that has both a communication layer, kind of a bus style communication layer, as well as the ability to kind of work with and manage modules and pass on the messages between them over this bus. So what's really cool is these modules are essentially images. They're containers. So you can have a Docker container that does your core logic, and you can have other containers that come from different services in Azure. So you can have kind of like chunks of Azure be converted into these Docker images and pushed down to your IoT devices. Notably, and you can look at the links for more details, is Azure Functions, Stream Analytics, and AI and machine learning. So you could have your core logic that pulls data from your sensors, and instead of sending all that data up to the cloud to get analyzed, you could actually have the ML module sit on your device. You can send your data to that, and you can process that locally and make your decision, one, not only faster, but two, instead of sending all that data up there, you can send just the result up there and save a lot of data charges that you might potentially have. So the edge is something really cool. I think it really plays, it's really a smart choice of technologies with containers, keeping that logic small and contained, but people are used to working with containers. They have a workflow, a development workflow that they're used to on working with that. So I think it's a really great way to reuse existing skills in this new style.
Yep. Yeah, and you could actually run the MS Dev Show on the edge if you wanted. That's a spoiler for a future episode.
Yes.
But you can run the MS Dev Show on your IoT Edge if you wanted to. Up next, the general availability of Azure Time Series Insights.
Raygun gives you... Hold on, scrap that. You've heard this ad way too much. Raygun is giving us an awesome chance to give away a free year's startup plan of Raygun crash reporting. In addition, 3 runners-up will win swag packs that include t-shirts and other freebies. You definitely want some of that. What do you have to do? That's a simple thing. Just let us know. What's the biggest programming fail you've ever seen? What's the nastiest bug you've ever caught? Let us know. Email us at feedback@msdevshow.com. Contest ends at the end of November. Hurry up and get it in now. Yeah, so for those of you not familiar with Time Series Insights, that's an Azure service where if you have time series data, which was explained to me in a brilliantly simple way, you have data that has a timestamp, isn't necessarily time series, but if that time series is an important axis, if you graph it, then it's time series. So if you have that kind of data, Time Series Insights is a way that you pump your data through it, and you can get a bunch of powerful visualizations and some AI and ML work done on it for you. And there's a storage aspect of it as well. And at the end of the day, whatever insights you glean out of this, you can actually expose through an API on the backside. So there's this one Azure service that's really doing 4 functions at once, and it makes it really easy to glean new data or insights out of the data that you already have and ingest that into your existing applications.
Yeah, and if you ask it to like, hey, show me 100,000 values between this date and this date, it's just like, okay, it's like a fraction of a second, and it will be able to answer that query, which is really truly powerful for doing data exploration.
And if you are interested in this, you go to the Time Series Insights information page. There is a link on there that will let you play with a kind of live demo. Oh, so if you're, yes, it's really handy.
Yeah, I saw the link. I was going to check it out, but it ran out of time before this, but definitely going to be checking that out within the next few days.
Okay. Get started. Okay, well, in the interest of time on the show, I'm not going to do that now. So we're getting into the home stretch here. So what else we got from Connect? Visual Studio App Center.
Yeah, and I believe that this one was, we've talked about it before as the mobile services or mobile center. And this is essentially going GA. All the good things that you need to build your app, create your app, monitor your app as a mobile app are all built to one. And it comes with a shiny new fidget spinner logo, as I like to call it.
Nice.
So if you look at the new Office logos, they have a same style to it, but this one looks like a fidget spinner to me. So
okay. Apache Cassandra API for Azure Cosmos DB. That's cool.
Yeah. I thought you would think that was cool. Not a whole lot of news on that itself, but if you're using Cassandra and you want to kind of start hooking into Cosmos, now you can do it a lot more quickly.
Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah. So formally, I mean, you could, well, I shouldn't say formally, still to this day, you could do like, you could have like a MongoDB interface to Cosmos DB. But this is just providing another option there. If you have an application that is, currently using Cassandra, or if you're creating a new application and you want to use that API, you can do that now, which is pretty cool. We also announced Azure Databricks. This was interesting.
Yeah. Do you want to cover this one a little bit more? I think you know
No,
this one a little bit better than I do.
No, so Azure Databricks, I'm still kind of digesting what it actually is, but we've actually worked with like some of the Apache Spark founders, and it's basically like hosted Apache Spark is my understanding. So it manages the entire Apache Spark platform for you. So if you are interested in Apache Spark, which is pretty awesome for like writing these queries that you execute super quickly, there's a lot of people that are using Apache Spark. This is one that kind of blew everybody's minds whenever we saw it. I mean, we already have HD Insight, which allows you to run this big cluster, but this one is specifically focused on Spark and having a really great experience there. And then our last story here, Microsoft is joining the MariaDB Foundation.
Yeah, so I actually didn't know much about MariaDB before this announcement, but apparently MariaDB is a fork of MySQL that is just way better. It's maintained by some of the people that were part of the original MySQL database project. And now Microsoft is joining the foundation. So that's pretty exciting as well.
Cool. I got my time series insight up and running now. I am exploring my data. Yeah, see right here, streaming complete 43,000 events, and you work with it like it's nothing. It's so cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and we lost Jason for the rest of this episode.
Yeah, I got hundreds of thousands of values on here. And did they take out? Maybe it was only whenever it was private. So there used to be a little indicator here that said the amount of time it was taking. It was just kind of cool to see that internally. I think it's gone. I think they took it out now, but needless to say, it's like a fifth of a second to run these massive queries. Okay, is that all we got for Connect announcements, Carl?
Yes,
so much stuff. I mean, there's like something for everybody. That's the way I feel.
And we didn't even cover everything. So
no, this was just like this was.
I mean, there was the new SQL operations tool to replace SQL SSMS.
Yep.
So tons of stuff, but we can't cover it all.
Yep. Yeah, you really have to watch like the 16 hours of video content if you really want to see everything. But we won't bore you with that right here. Okay, so let's talk to Jared about Mile of Music and this application, because I thought this was kind of interesting, the melding of, mobile and cloud and beacons and all of this other stuff. So Jared, can you give us an overview? I guess we should start with like, what is Mile of Music itself? And then we'll talk about what you guys built.
Sure. And it's probably best to start with an overview because a lot of what we have to do for Buy the Music is because of sort of the circumstances that we're working in here. So just quick overview on Buy the Music. So Buy the Music, it's a music festival. Obviously, we have a lot of them in Wisconsin. Not as big as Summerfest, but we're trying to get bigger as year on year goes. This year, we just celebrated year 5. So this 5th year doing this. Interesting factoids about the festival, specifically focuses on like American inspired music, or Americana, I guess is the term I've used certain times. Festival's 100% free, other than going to all the venues and buying your beer and whatever you need in order to sustain yourself. But other than that, no cost for the festival. And it has a very strong focus on we bring in a mixture of local artists that are in the area. Some of them are national, but the big thing is everybody pretty much signs a waiver that says no doing covers of other people's work. The festival wants to focus on people bringing in their own new music, new styles of music into the festival, and really showcasing that, rather than saying, hey, I can do a Led Zeppelin cover, look at me go.
Yeah.
So pretty much this happens over the course of about 3 or 4 days, first or second weekend in August. We take over about 70 venues in downtown Appleton and just have a grand old time with that. With that in mind, what we've done with Skyline is we build a My Music app. We're at about 2 or 3 years of iterations with it now. And really the main focus of it is providing anybody who's attending the festival with information on the various venues, the artists, whatever the concert schedule is, and especially with what we had this past year was especially important because we had a lot of rain during the festival, and some of our venues are actually outdoors. So we had a lot of rescheduling, a lot of those things, and we were actually able to give people live updates of when the venues were changing using the Milo Music app. I know this year they did some really cool things with it as far as being able to sample music from the various artists. They had pretty much a button, I think, where you just say, give me 5 artists, and it'll give you 5 songs from 5 random artists, and then from there you can kind of build your own schedule over time of what bands you want to go and check out. Because a lot of this, again, is focusing on getting the opportunity to see new bands that you wouldn't normally see at Summerfest or some of the other festivals.
And I know right before this episode, Jason downloaded the app and was kind of amazed by that feature itself. He was listening to several different bands and be like, wow, I would never listen to that, or hey, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I just clicked on artists, and then I clicked on an artist, and then the music's I muted my phone now. But yeah, I started listening to them, which is a pretty cool feature, because it's like, I should check them out. Now, your location, like I can see in your background there. I don't know if it'll probably get cut off in the end product here, but like if they were playing right now, like if it was Mile Music, I assume you could hear it from where you're sitting right now.
Oh yeah, one of the biggest venues, Houdini Plaza, is right outside the window from here. There's 2 or 3 other venues within about a 300-foot walk from here, so it's very concentrated. We pretty much are actually within about a mile stretch of College Avenue.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So I know that there's a few other really cool pieces to that, but before we get to some of the cool things, you want to kind of just talk about some of the technologies and architecture of this app. Like, what are the main technologies that are being worked with, both on the, to make the app itself and to support it, like any cloud infrastructure there might be?
Sure. So I'm going to try and give the best information I can, because I'm more involved on the data side rather than on the app development itself, but I dig into it a little bit. So my general understanding is most of this was built on using Hockey app. So a lot of the code was contained within there, and that's what we were using to keep track of version control and ultimately push it out to the, I believe we just had it in the Apple Store and Google Play. Aside from that, I actually don't have a lot of information about the core architecture of what it was used. I want to say it was Xamarin based, but that's secondhand knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So what is speaking of the data portion of this, so like how does this work? Because I noticed, I opened up, you got venues in here, you have the artists, you have, all this other information in there. So is that just like a SQL database on the back end?
So some of that is, I want to say they just have some JSON files sitting out in blob storage that the app itself is referencing directly.
Yeah.
We have the data duplicate a little bit, and for some of the analytics that we do, which I was more involved in, we pull the data out of the JSON and actually store it in SQL databases and such for some post-mortem analysis we've been doing. But I believe the base data sits out in just some JSON files and blob storage.
Yeah, sometimes that's just the easiest way to do it. I always tend to overthink and over-engineer these things and have like this massive database, when now I can just throw like a piece of JSON out there and just call it a day.
So you mentioned post-mortem analysis. What kind of things are you collecting and what are you doing purposefully so that you can make decisions after this event has happened?
So actually, if you want to see what we have so far, most of our analytics are actually publicly available. So I'm not sure how best to send this to you, but I do have a link to our current website where we have all of our data store.
Okay. We'll make sure that goes in the show notes, or you can send it over Skype.
Because one of the things we were trying to focus on this year was we sometimes try and use our Milo Music Initiative as a way to try and be a little more explorative with how we can present data. And so our one challenge this year was some different approaches to pushing data out to mobile. And so let's send that there. So what we actually did this year was we just push out a basic Azure website that we pushed Power BI content to, and we actually embedded it within the web page. And that's pretty much what we have up until this point. We've got some more analysis we're trying to come up with for the time being, but for right now, this is what we have. And I guess, in general, the things that we're mostly looking for really boils down to two things. It's one, we want to be able to see how well the app is performing and how people are actually utilizing the app as they're attending the festival. And then the other part, which has been the more interesting challenge for us in recent years, is unlike other festivals like Summerfest and such, where you've got your base grounds where you need to pay to get in, and then there's a confined area that everybody belongs in, and if you're in there, you're a part of the festival. What we do with Milo Music is much more freeform. Like I said, we've got 70 different venues, but it's a bunch of random buildings in downtown Appleton. So there's no real like ticket analysis or those other data points that we would normally be able to rely on to see how well is the festival being attended. So one of the things we do, and this is where the beacon technology comes in, is we use beacons essentially to help us track how people are actually attending the festival, what concerts they're going to see, things along those lines.
Okay. So just so I understand the beacon, so, those get placed at different locations. I assume, did you put them at where each artist was?
Yeah. So essentially, due to budgetary constraints, we don't get quite as much coverage as we'd like.
Yeah.
But the general gist of it is, we buy these beacons. They're like $20 a pop. There's, I don't know, 5 or 6 different vendors I think I've seen out there.
Wow, that's actually pretty expensive.
They're pretty expensive, but as long as you can keep track of them, long term it's pretty well worth the effort. So essentially what we do, we take a beacon, we place it at a venue, and pretty much the beacon will sit there for the course of the festival. And all it's really doing is it's sending out a Bluetooth signal that says, hey, I'm a beacon, I've got such and such an ID here, I'm here. So then what we do with the beacons is the Milo Music app that we designed is configured, assuming Bluetooth is enabled on the phone, which is one caveat, at least for the app right now.
There's almost beacons.
Yeah, pretty much things along those lines. Mm-hmm. Ours are a little bit like trapezoidal, and I don't know why they're designed that way because nobody looks at them anyways. But essentially, the beacon just sits there, and anytime somebody is actively using the Milo Music app within range of Bluetooth, so 30, 40 feet depending on battery signal, the app will go and detect that there's a beacon in the area, and basically says, okay, I see beacons here, give me your ID. From there, the app actually sends it out to an API that we have sitting up in the cloud. It's essentially, it's an event hub for the time being. So we send the messages out to the event hub, and then we've got a workflow after the fact that uses Stream Analytics, an Azure SQL database, and we didn't have it in place this year, but we've used cloud services in the past for some real-time analysis we were trying to do during the festival as well. Ultimately, then trying to glean all of that data, store it in the database, and then be able to do the post-mortem analysis that we're working on right now.
Okay. So how many beacons did you actually have then?
So this year, I think we had about 50.
Okay.
I think so.
Which is still pretty good.
Yeah, we had about 3/4 of our venues covered, and this year we just focused on the venues that were either more important to the organizers of the festival or the ones that we expected to have more of a draw for the festival as a whole. Mm-hmm. So we got about 3/4 of the venues covered this year.
Okay. So the app knows. I just haven't worked with beacons yet. So the app like sort of gets an event whenever it sees a beacon then?
Pretty much. Yeah, it gets an event. that says, I was near this beacon, and it gave me this ID. And like I said, then it sends it off to the API. And in the workflows we have later on, then we further define, okay, this ID correlates to this beacon, which is actually sitting at this venue. Because the beacons themselves aren't GPS aware or geographically aware. So at least the ones that we use, you have to, in your own metadata, define where this beacon is going to live and then make sure that the beacon actually ends up where it's supposed to be.
That actually brings up a good point. Why not just GPS locate them?
My guess is probably, well, more than likely you'd need more expensive beacons in order to pull that off.
I'm saying the users. Just the app could just request the location. I mean, I the biggest disadvantage I could see is people just turning it off. Versus the number of people that have Bluetooth on.
No, that's a good question, and we have had that discussion in the past. I think part of the issue we've run into with that, among some other things that we've done with the app, is as it was explained to me, the stores that you're publishing your app out to, for some of these things like paying attention to people's GPS, or like some of the things we wanted to do this year and we didn't get around to was asking them for some demographic information, so we had more metadata for any of the analysis we would do after the fact. When you submit your app to the store, sometimes you need to justify your reasoning for why you're asking people to do these things, because especially the GPS and such, it can be more of a draw on people's batteries, which can become a concern for the store because they don't want to put, an app out there and then people download it and then everybody complains that, oh gosh, this drained my battery in an hour. Not necessarily the best experience. So for us, at this point, it hasn't made enough sense, or we haven't been able to make enough of a point to say, hey, let us just tap into their GPS information. I think the other thing we struggle with too is sometimes the venues we have defined are so close to one another that depending on how good their signal is, we may get some conflicting results on this person. Their GPS says they're at this venue when actually they're next door.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our venues are so close that could come up.
Yeah, so I was looking at this link that you sent me with the Power BI thing, and I think it's kind of cool because there's some things on here that I would never think of, like total miles walked by fans between venues and total calories burned, stuff like that. Definitely metrics I would not think of doing. I immediately go to like which venues are popular, or like which bands are popular, and try to figure out maybe how to space them, optimally for the next year or something like that. Or, like kind of, seeing how people move throughout there. If people kind of just went from one to another, or if they went directly to bands that they were interested in, I never would think of having these kinds of data and stats to be able to put up. What are, is there any other kind of interesting stats that you've seen or been able to derive that you just aren't showing on this page here?
So some of the things that we had going on in the one page I've especially liked looking at, and for whatever reason, the content isn't on there, which I'm a little curious why, which is the travel tab. We were utilizing one of the custom visualizations that are available in Power BI. I think it's just called Flow. But essentially what we were doing is we were able to assign anonymous IDs to people and then go ahead and say, okay, this ID showed up at this location at this time, and then later on they showed up at this venue like so many minutes later. And so we were able to, we don't keep track of any personal information, but at least generally we were able to see, okay, a lot of people started at this venue and then they kind of spread out, and then they went to another one of the big venues for this big concert, which has been really popular in past years. Things along those lines. So the travel tab was certainly showing that. I know the other one, which doesn't really utilize the beacon data, but it utilizes our other main source of data, which was app usage, is like the last 2 or 3 tabs for application insights and timeline. was really neat for us to see, because the organizers were interested in seeing, okay, people are going into this app stores, they're downloading our app. Geographically, can we get some idea of where most of our users are coming from? And so there you've just got a basic a map of the world that shows just a dispersal of where all of our users are that have downloaded the app, or at least from the data that we could get from their phones, like what's their home base. I don't remember how exactly it's defined in the phones themselves, but at least gives us some idea of where these people are coming from to come and attend our festival.
Aspose offers a powerful set of file management APIs with which developers can create applications, which can create, open, edit, and save the majority of popular business file formats. Their product range supports a multitude of file formats, including Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations, PDF documents, OneNote, Outlook, Project, Visio files, popular image formats, and many others. Aspose produces APIs for .NET, Java in the cloud, which can be utilized in almost any modern language available today. Visit www.aspose.com for a free 30-day no limitations trial. And if you get stuck, message the friendly support team for help. All technical support is offered free of charge. Remember, if you're a lucky winner, you will receive a free developer small business license for Aspose.words for .NET, a powerful toolkit to work with Word documents in your applications.
I feel bad for like the person that looks at this, and I can see artist view count, Forte and their name got cut off here, but they were like Forte and the Pianissimos, like they by far had like the least number of fans go there, and it's a striking difference here because number one was Smooth Hound Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just a ton of people go to that. It's kind of neat too. Like by location here, you can see like who went where. I love this too. You can see there's like a line chart showing, what people are going to over time and like when it peaked. This would be great. What I would use this for is I would figure out what the best time to go is, when nobody else is there and when the good artists are playing.
Yeah, and I know especially like that. That's some of our plans for long term is, and I've been looking to do, especially this year, is see if we can do some sort of capacity analysis, and that's why I think it was especially interesting some of the articles you were showing around IoT Edge, because right now up until this point, we've just been using an event hub because at this point we're just using the phones as a point to collect data that we can use for analysis later on. But just thinking of possibilities of, if we can use just an IoT hub or use the IoT Edge hub to say, okay, the phone detects that they're near this beacon, which is actually this venue, and give them a notification that says, hey, you're nearby. The band you're hearing right now is actually this band. Could be some really interesting opportunities to give people more exposure as they're moving around the festival. So that they get more of that information up front rather than, having to, hear some good music and then pull out their phone and try and navigate through the app to find the specific schedule entry for who's playing right now.
Yeah. Actually, this reminds me a lot of whenever you're at amusement parks, they're getting pretty smart with their apps and they'll actually give you notifications like, hey, this ride that's, very in demand is, the line is unusually short right now. And they'll give you that kind of information, which I think is pretty cool. So they can sort of do load leveling too across the crowd. So it's pretty cool. Just making an event much more efficient. Actually that brings up a good point. I don't know, has Skyline ever considered, well, first of all, is this open source or is this closed source?
Good question.
Yeah. Because my follow-up question was going to be around like, taking this code base and allowing other people to kind of use this for different events. I think that would be kind of neat.
Yeah, that's been our thought is if we can come up with just a basic architecture for like this, there are lots of festivals out there that could probably benefit from being able to do this kind of analysis.
Yeah.
So I could see a lot of value for that. I don't know right now what the plans are if we would go open source with this or not. I'm not in the position to answer that question, so I would have to say I think it's something worth considering, but at this point I don't know what the thoughts are along those lines.
Okay, cool. Anything else you wanted to mention on the app or the architecture or the data design?
I think certainly for us, the data analytics that we've been pulling off of this has evolved over time. Like the application insights data we pulled in this year was brand new for us, and the amount of insight we were able to get from app insights alone this year has been phenomenal. It didn't really require a lot of effort for us to get that up and running. But still, the information we've been able to glean for it has been really useful, and I think the organizers will be getting a lot of value out of it. I think a lot of the questions that have been asked here about, using GPS signals in place of some of the beacons and that, for some of the analysis, we'd like to be able to shore up these numbers a little bit better so we can, get more accurate counts of miles walked, calories burned. Those would all be interesting things for us to see. But ultimately, I think right now, the way that we've been able to utilize cloud architectures and app insights in order to get this data out and immediately available to users and ultimately to the organizers, it's just a testament to the roadmaps of some of the technologies we're using here, the IoT, the Power BI for the stuff we're doing here for analytics. I think there's a lot of cutting edge technology that's part of this solution, and it's really neat to see it all come together for this specific use case.
That's a great point, because you mentioned using event hubs for the ingestion. I think that's pretty cool because obviously this event is very seasonal, as in it only takes place during 5 days. People aren't attending days that are not those 5 days. So,
Right.
You're basically, because of the cloud, you're basically paying nothing to run this thing in the off season. And then during the event itself, event hubs can sort of buffer that data. And then on the back end, you can just scale it up to sort of get caught up. So it's like, you don't even have to be in a rush to even scale this thing. You just sort of let stuff happen. And then you just monitor and say, look, our scale wasn't right at all. Let's make some adjustments. Actually, you know what? Let's go get lunch first, and then we'll make adjustments when we get back. Like, you don't even have to be in a huge rush. All it changes really is like your analytic process at the end of it. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and especially for us, the fact that we've had it in the cloud has made it so easy for us because obviously since the festival really only happens for 5 days, we don't get a lot of opportunities to do load balancing or see once we get production size data, how is our app and our infrastructure going to respond? And I know within the past few years we've run into situations where one part of our solution just couldn't keep up, but since it was in Azure, it was very simple for us to say, okay, this is our current issue. Let's increase the resources on this. It takes a couple minutes, and suddenly we're back up and running as if nothing happened.
Exactly. Very cool. Okay, let's move on. Let's see here, Carl. What do you have for your dev tip of the week? Well, you have one, and I have one, and we'll see whose is better.
So I recently was in a spot where I have a bunch of links that I want to send to somebody, or like they're on a web page, and I want to get them into something that's like into Slack or a text editor. And a lot of times if you copy them and paste them, you only get the text out. You don't get the actual link, something that somebody can click on. And I found that to be really annoying. So I found that there is a Chrome extension which will let you copy as Markdown. So you'll get the link text and the link of the link itself. And when you paste, what was put in the clipboard was the Markdown itself instead of just the raw text. So when you paste that, you can get exactly that. In addition, this does a lot more. So if you want all the tabs that you have open, you can click a button and you get all of the the links to all of the tabs that are open as a list in Markdown. So you can easily send everything you have open to somebody if you're doing research on a particular topic as well. So it's a pretty handy extension.
Very cool. Okay, so I was, this is a bit of a teaser / spoiler. I was containerizing our website, once again, and I was heavy in Chrome looking at the requests that were happening, and I was like, man, our website just makes tons and tons of requests. And it was making somewhere in the order of like 120, 130 requests. And I was like, what are these? I don't even know what these requests are. And I kept looking and they were like these weird, like what is it? RLCDN. So RLCDN. There was this other one. I started searching for these sites, and these are all like super shady sites. I'm like, oh man, do I have a virus or something? But I would switch to a different Chrome profile and it wasn't happening. I'm like, what is going on here? What was going on was thankfully I run ad block. Like I really don't feel bad anymore about running ad block because it was basically protecting me from this. Here, what was going on in a nutshell was, we use Discuss for the comments on the MS Dev Show site. And by default, Discuss is like one step away from a virus if you don't actually go in and like reconfigure it. It literally, like I said, it was adding about 60 extra requests to our site. It was basically loading like these 1 pixel by 1 pixel invisible GIFs from like every imaginable tracking site, because they're clearly selling this data to like anybody and everybody. So I went into my settings and noticed. So
this is your personal user settings?
For the
site settings?
No, for the site settings. So you can't, okay, so there is two pieces of this. One is that as a user, you can opt out, and there is a setting for that. So if you go to your Discuss profile, you can go in there. There's a link to, or there's a place where you can actually opt out from getting all this tracking. And I recommend doing that. And then as a person who has Discuss embedded in your website, by default, there are 2 checkboxes, and the first one is enable anonymous cookie targeting for your site's visitors. So this is basically tracking you through every means possible. And then the second check mark is automatically append merchant codes to product links on your site. So they're trying to profit off you in like all these different ways. And I get it. Like if you don't know what the product is, like you are the product. I mean, this is a good example of that, but I don't know. It just, for whatever reason, like the fact that I was pretty convinced that I had some kind of virus, and then it turned out it was just these default settings. It just feels super slimy. And they sort of address this on Twitter, and they're like, oh, well, you can pay us and I don't know, do something, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I turned off these 2 checkboxes, and it seems like everything is better. It still doesn't make me feel great about using their service. I'm trying to see it from their perspective. It's sort of legitimate. Like they have to make money somehow, and they are providing a nice service and that whole type of thing. But man, this just felt like egregious to me, like 60 extra requests, slowing down our page renders. And, I don't know, the whole thing just felt super, super slimy and really not upfront to me. So definitely go in and change those settings, or I even recommend just removing Discuss. I don't really have a great replacement. Some people on Twitter mentioned some things. I'm considering my options. I guess now that I found those settings, I'm a little more inclined to just leave it on there, but turn off the evil stuff. But who knows what other evil there is in there, and who knows if they're going to turn it back on. And I did go in and actually configure a new site through their system, and it does turn these evil options on by default. So it's not like, I bumped one of them or something like that. And I don't remember, ever seeing these when I first set it up. And in fact, whenever I created a new site with Discuss, it felt like they were intentionally keeping me from this, because they would show a different set of options. Like, oh yeah, it's so easy to configure. Let's get this embedded in your site. And then you go back and you like have to click on your profile and click on settings. Like you really have to hunt to sort of find these settings after the fact. So I think that most people have these on. I mean, if I had to guess, it's probably like 90% of people who are using Discuss have this turned on. And then the other thing, I mean, I think it seems like ad block effectively blocks this as well. And I don't know. I don't feel bad about running ad block in this case, because it's not like we have some ads on our, on the MS Dev Show site, but I don't feel like I don't feel like they're crossing a line, and our great sponsors help support the show, and I don't know. I guess we're upfront with it, and it just feels a lot different to me. But I don't know if you have any feedback, email to feedback@msdevshow.com or send us a tweet. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on this. But if you search for, if you look online at this, there's tons of blog posts where people are like, I'm dropping disgust because of this disgusting behavior. See what I did there? So I just wanted to give, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on that. Okay, Jared. So we play a game on this show. What I need you to do is pick a number between 1 and 4 inclusive, and it can't be 3 because we're out of 3s.
2.
2. Okay. 2 is allowed. Okay.
Right.
Although we don't have a lot of 2s left. So let me find a 2. Let's play some music here. Oh man. I think we're going to have to get more cards soon. Oh, here we go. Oh no, I have an X on that one. Here we go. Okay. While at the top of Mount Everest, would you rather lose your hat or lose your goggles?
Oh, goggles, easy. I'm a big fan of hats, so for me, losing a hat is an atrocity.
Yeah, but then your eyeballs are going to freeze.
I'm kind of willing to accept that.
Yeah,
in order to keep like the head temperature. Like for me, I have like one of their like Mad Bomber hats that's just nice and woolly and like covers my entire face. I even have a flap
woolly
that
bomber
comes over
hat?
my
Yeah.
eyes. Yeah.
Cool.
Like you get one of those, like goggles fall off. I don't think I'd worry too much.
Yeah. I don't know. Cause like, don't you lose like tons of heat through your head? So I would agree with that. If it was more like, gloves, then I would probably take gloves over goggles, but goggles before hat. So, so Carl, I don't want to waste another question on you. So why don't you just answer the same one? So they're a scarce resource now.
I would say hat as well, but mostly because
you're going to say
I'm bald.
Oh, you're going to keep your hat, you mean?
I'm going to keep the hat.
Okay.
Because I'm bald. But I have heard some stuff. You mentioned you lose more heat through your head. I think that is kind of an old wives' tale.
I believe
think
it.
they've
That's
done
why
research.
I didn't want to say it with authority.
Yeah. So, I don't think that that's necessarily the truth, but because I have no hair up there, I think that becomes a little bit a priority.
Yeah. I was just going to search for what's going to. You don't lose the most. So the first result, but of course, this is just random. It's fake.
It's on the internet.
Fakenews.com. I always joke that with my wife whenever she always comes to me with like these crazy over the top stories. I'm like, where'd you read that? Fakenews.com. But anyway, so it says here, it feels like more heat escapes through some places more than others. Your head, face, neck, and chest are up to 5 times more sensitive to temperature changes. Let's see here. Heat loss depends on how much skin is exposed on your body, not where. Okay. So they're saying it's an old wives' tale, which I believe because like I had no scientific evidence. It was just something that, I had heard in like, 3rd grade at some point. So, I guess we haven't proved or disproved it, but, so we're not sure that we lose more through our head. So at least we've got that settled. Okay. So Jared, where can people find you?
So I think I gave you my Twitter handle, which I'm really not the best Twitter user because I just don't get in there very often. Probably best way to contact me is my email. First, so jkuehn@skylinetechnologies.com.
So that's JKUEHN@skylinetechnologies.com.
Yeah, I know it's spelled nothing like how we say it, but that's life.
That's all right.
So yeah, best way would be get me by email. Certainly hit me up on Twitter if you like. I might see it someday if I get back out there.
Okay, that sounds great. And Carl's also going to have a link to the analytics in the show notes, right, Carl?
Yep.
So that people can go check that out because that is pretty cool to explore. And Carl, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Carl Schweitzer.
And you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/ytechie. So Jared, thank you so much for coming on here and talking to us about the Mile of Music project. It's very cool.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.